Hi, I'm Jessica. You'd think being the CEO of a successful tech company would make my in-laws proud. Instead, it became their mission to protect their precious son's reputation. Let me tell you how I discovered just how toxic success can be, especially when it threatens fragile egos. And not just any egos, those of your husband's parents. You're working late again. Calvin's voice carried that sharp edge I'd noticed creeping in lately. My husband stood in the doorway of my home office, arms crossed, already dressed for bed. Just wrapping up the quarterly projections. The board meeting's tomorrow. I replied, keeping my focus on the screen. Mom and Dad invited us to dinner this weekend. They're concerned about us. I sighed, already sensing where this was going. Last month's Forbes feature on my company's innovative AI solutions had stirred another wave of their so-called concerns. Tia just sent over the PR strategy for next month's product launch. Want to take a look? I asked, trying to steer the conversation elsewhere. Jessica, it's family. That dinner. I should have known it would mark the beginning of everything unraveling and coming back together in ways I never expected. Your success is admirable, my mother-in-law Margaret said as she delicately sliced her steak. Her tone dripped with the kind of politeness that only served to mask disdain. But surely, now that the company's stable, you might consider a position better suited to. To what, Margaret? She barely concealed her smirk. Family life, dear. Calvin needs a wife, not a business partner. I felt Calvin stiffen beside me, but as always, he said nothing. Standing up to his parents had never been his strength. Thank goodness for Aaron. My best friend since law school had warned me about Margaret's latest moves. Over coffee that morning, she'd said, "They're consulting corporate lawyers, Jessica. They're looking for ways to push you out. Something about traditional family values." I brushed it off, naive enough to think Calvin would never allow it. "Are you sure about that?" Erin had asked, her voice heavy with skepticism. Now, as I sat through dinner, her warning echoed in my mind. My phone buzzed under the table. "Tia, board member chatter. Your in-laws are making moves. Call me ASAP." Margaret's satisfied expression told me she thought she had all the power. Her country club connections and old money influence might make her formidable, but she had no idea who she was up against. "More wine, dear?" Margaret's syrupy voice was laced with venom. "No thanks, I have an early meeting." I stood pushing my chair back with deliberate calm. "Calvin, are you coming?" His hesitation spoke volumes. I didn't wait for an answer. Walking to the car, I texted Erin. "You were right, time to play hardball." Her reply came instantly, "Already on it. Bring evidence tomorrow." The whispers had started small, concerned glances at charity galas, subtle remarks about work-life balance. But now it was escalating. They're systematically contacting every major stakeholder. Ariel, the only other female board member, explained over lunch. Margaret's hosting private dinners to paint you as a threat to traditional family values. This goes deeper than we thought. Scott, an investigative journalist I'd helped years ago, slid a folder across the table. Your in-laws have ties to 3 board members' wives, all part of the same country club committee. Tia grabbed the folder, her PR instincts kicking in. They're building a narrative. The career-obsessed wife destroying their son's masculinity. Classic manipulation. My phone buzzed again. "Calvin, Mom says you haven't RSVP'd for their anniversary gala." I stared at the screen, rage simmering. "Me, I'm running a company, Calvin. Your mother's party isn't my priority." His reply came swiftly. "This is what they're talking about, Jessica. You never make time for family anymore." Hands trembling, I hung up when had my ambitious, supportive husband turned into his parents' puppet. "They've got their hooks in him," Erin muttered as she reviewed the evidence Scott had gathered. "But they made one crucial mistake." "What's that?" "They put everything in writing. Emails, texts, meeting minutes from their precious country club. They were so confident, they got sloppy." That evening, I found Calvin in his study, looking troubled. "The company's stock dropped 2 points today," he said, his tone uneasy. "Rumors are spreading, and maybe they have a point." I froze. "What does that mean?" "Victoria. Dad says a wife should," he faltered. "Should what?" I snapped. "Know her place?" His silence felt like a slap. "Tell me, Calvin, did you marry me because you wanted a trophy or because you loved who I am?" He didn't answer, My phone lit up with a message from Ariel. Emergency board meeting call for next week. They're making their move. I forwarded it to Erin, adding, time for plan B. Her reply came instantly, already in motion. Meet tomorrow at 7. Bringing Scott and the evidence. Later that night, lying awake in bed, I heard Calvin on the phone in the hallway. Yes, mother, I understand. No, she doesn't suspect anything. I shut my eyes, remembering our wedding day and the vows he'd made to stand by me through everything. Now he was standing with them, plotting my downfall. They wanted a war. They'd learned the hard way that taking down a CEO required more than country club gossip and a spineless husband. The next morning, Scott spread a stack of photos across my office table. Every so-called protest outside your office, paid actors, he explained. Here are the invoices. Margaret's assistant accidentally sent them to her personal email instead of her burner account. Tia whistled. Amateur hour. I've got social media evidence too. Every viral post about toxic female CEOs destroying families, all traced back to accounts tied to Margaret's social circle. Erin leaned forward, holding up her tablet. And here's the real smoking gun. Remember the harassment complaint from last month? Margaret wrote it herself. She used her country club friend's daughter's name without permission. The girl's furious and ready to testify. Not only is that unethical, I said, flipping through the documents, it's a major legal liability. It gets better, Scott added, sliding another folder forward. They hired private investigators to follow you. Pay for with your brother-in-law's company credit card. Not very subtle. Before I could respond, the door burst open. Calvin stood there, red-faced. You're investigating my mother? No, I said evenly. I'm investigating the people trying to destroy my company. The fact that your mother's behind it is her choice, not mine. She's just trying to protect our marriage. By committing fraud? By paying protesters? That's not protection. Calvin, that's persecution. Your mother hired people to stalk me. You're twisting everything, he shouted. Mom says. Mom says? I interrupted. When did you stop thinking for yourself, Calvin? When did her opinion become more important than our marriage? The silence between us felt like glass about to shatter. I can't do this anymore, he said, his voice cracking. They're right. This isn't what I signed up for. A wife should support her husband, not overshadow him. I stared at him, my voice calm but steely. If you think my ambition is overshadowing you, Calvin, that's your problem, not mine. Ariel appeared in the doorway. Emergency board meeting's been moved up to tomorrow morning, she announced, and 3 more board members want to meet privately beforehand. Perfect timing, I said, standing. Calvin, since you're so concerned about supporting spouses, you should know your mother's little campaign has an interesting side effect. Turns out, your brother's investment firm is losing major clients. They don't appreciate learning their money manager's family orchestrates smear campaigns. 2 clients have already withdrawn their portfolios. What are you saying? What have you done? He asked, his voice shaking. I didn't do anything. Your parents destroyed their own reputations. Funny how that works. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The next morning, the boardroom was silent as I placed evidence folders in front of each member. Margaret sat at the far end, her usual smug smile cracking under the pressure. My father-in-law gripped his armrest, his knuckles white. Calvin hadn't shown up, likely hiding at his parents' house. Before we discuss my supposed family values problem, I began, let's review some interesting financial transactions. Scott connected his laptop to the projector. Public protests require permits. These didn't have any because they were staged. Here are the invoices, traced directly to accounts managed by Margaret Winchester. Margaret's composure faltered. Those documents are fabricated, she said stiffly. Like the harassment complaint you fabricated? Erin cut in, sliding forward a notarized statement. Miss Sarah Chen would like to know why you used her name without permission. She's particularly interested in pursuing legal action, Ariel said, her voice cutting through the tense silence. Charles shot to his feet, his face flushed. This is absurd. We were protecting our son. By committing fraud, Ariel countered, her tone sharp. And by manipulating stock prices through deliberate disinformation. I imagine the SEC will be very interested in that part. Tia stepped forward, sliding a folder across the table. Here's the data from the social media campaigns. Paid trolls, fake accounts, all traced back to your country club circle. Did you know impersonation for the purpose of market manipulation is a federal crime? You're destroying our family? Margaret shrieked. No, I replied, meeting her glare. You did that when you decided your son's imaginary humiliation was worth sabotaging my career. I leaned forward. Speaking of destruction, how's Thomas's investment firm doing? The mention of their other son's company made both in-laws pale. 3 major clients withdrew their portfolios this morning. I continued, my voice calm but pointed. Apparently they don't trust financial advisors whose families engage in corporate sabotage. Funny how reputation works, isn't it? Charles's voice quivered as he asked, "What do you want?" "Your resignations from all advisory boards," I replied without hesitation. "Public apologies, and a notarized agreement to stay out of my business and my marriage. And if we refuse—" Scott leaned back, a sly smile on his face. "Then my exposé runs tomorrow. Fraud, market manipulation, harassment, complete with evidence. Your choice." The tension in the room was palpable when the door opened and Calvin walked in, looking exhausted. "It's true," he said quietly, his voice heavy. "All of it. I found Mom's burner phone, saw all the messages." "Calvin, dear," Margaret began, her voice softening. "We did it for you." "No," he snapped, cutting her off. "You did it for your reputation. You've always cared more about appearances than happiness." He turned to me, his eyes filled with regret. "Jessica, I'm sorry. I should have stood up to them years ago." I shook my head, my voice calm but resolute. "A bit late for that." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. "The divorce papers are with my lawyer. Your mother finally got her wish. No daughter-in-law to overshadow her precious son." "Jessica, please." I ignored him and addressed the board. "You have the evidence. I trust you'll make the right decision regarding the Winchesters' involvement with this company." I turned and walked out, my head high, as chaos erupted behind me. My phone buzzed as I exited the building. Messages from my team. Aaron, SEC filing ready. Tia, press release drafted. Scott, board votes unanimous. They're out. Ariel, social response overwhelmingly positive. That night, I sat in my office, gazing out at the city lights. My company was safe. The truth was out. The in-laws' reputation was in tatters. And somewhere across town, Calvin was finally learning that actions have consequences. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's ensuring everyone knows why they failed. A deeper conversation. This story explores a difficult question. In a marriage, where should your primary loyalty lie? With your spouse or your parents? Jessica's situation reveals a harsh reality many face. Choosing between personal success and a marriage strained by toxic in-laws. Was Calvin's betrayal worse because he initially supported Jessica's career, or was his family's manipulation so intense that he deserves some understanding? At what point does family pressure cross the line into emotional abuse? If you discovered your in-laws were actively trying to destroy your career, would you give your spouse time to choose sides, as Jessica did, or is that kind of betrayal an immediate deal breaker? What's your breaking point? Share your experiences and thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might help someone facing a similar situation. If you found this story thought-provoking, hit that like button and subscribe for more explorations of complex family dynamics. Let's talk about it below, because sometimes the most painful betrayals come from those who promise to stand by us. What would you have done in Jessica's shoes?